you can get away without missing out. Whether you're traveling across Idaho or just spending more time outside, the Connector keeps you up to date with the local stories that matter, from wildfire season to community news. Stay connected to Idaho with the Connector, Idaho Daily News. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. You're listening to Idaho Matters. 2 years ago, we celebrated the 100th birthday of Idaho Senator Frank Church, who served as a U.S. Senator from Idaho from 1957 until 1981. And in 1975, he was chairman of the Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, which investigated several illegal operations carried out by America's intelligence community. Filmmaker James Mulryan dug into Church's life and his crusade for political and social justice in his film, Senator Frank Church, Portrait of a Patriot. And he's joining us live now to talk more about this. James, welcome to the program. It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you, Gemma. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
So, James, can you tell us a bit about the documentary? What did you focus on as you looked at Frank Church?
Well, Frank Church was a man that was always honest, and he wanted to check the power, the executive power of the president. And we're seeing this now where it's out of control. And so he was always trying to have the balance of Congress and the president. And so his story is a powerful story that's still very relevant to today.
And how did you get started making this film?
Well, I was listening to Reader's Corner on NPR, and there was a book being discussed that was called The Thursday Night Massacre. And this was in 1980. 12 Democrats were defeated by Republican political operatives who were playing dirty tricks on these candidates. So basically, the Senate shifted from the Democrats being in power to the Republicans being in power. And this was the first time in 30 years that this had occurred. So it was like an earthquake. It was, Ronald Reagan came in, Carter was out, Church was out, and so that was the end of his career as far as the Senate.
Can you talk about the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Activities? What was it, and what exactly did it do?
Well, right after Watergate, the country wanted some answers about what had been going on with the executive and the CIA and the FBI and the NSA. And so Church formed a committee, the Church Committee, in 1975, and they investigated primarily assassination attempts on foreign leaders, and then also citizens, U.S. citizens that were being wiretapped by the government.
And talk to us about Frank Church and how he was involved in this committee.
Well, he headed the committee, and he had a big staff, and the whole investigation went on for about a year. And he came out with a lot of information, and there were some acts that followed based on bribery and control of the various intelligence agencies.
And what kinds of things did the committee uncover? Can you tell us about some of those scandals that emerged?
Yes, the CIA was trying to kill Castro and various other, I guess you would call them socialist leaders around the world, and they did some really crazy stuff, like trying to put an exploding cigar in with Castro, and so that was one of the things. And then the FBI was investigated for smearing Martin Luther King, who was about to win a Nobel Peace Prize, but they thought he was a communist, but they wanted to smear him. So they wiretapped him in hotel rooms, and he was having affairs with other women. And so this was given to his wife, and he was basically blackmailed. They wanted him to commit suicide, if you can believe that.
Oh,
But he
wow.
knew what was going on and he got the Nobel Peace Prize. So that was the second thing. Then the NSA was constantly surveilling US citizens, primarily Vietnam War protesters. And they even went as far as to surveil Frank Church and Senator Baker. This only came out much later, but they were just notorious for doing these things without warrants. And of course, today we're seeing this coming across again.
Hmm. So, what kinds of laws or changes were made after some of these revelations came to light through this committee?
One of the things that came out was that you were not allowed to bribe foreign leaders anymore. There was an act that came out, uh, and that you were not allowed to surveil people without warrants. That there had to be checks on the power of the CIA and the FBI and the NSA.
So, I'm also curious. There are a lot of archival photographs and other information in your film. So, how much
Right.
research did you really have to do to create this documentary?
Well, I had a tremendous trove of material from the archives at BSU, and Bethune Church had taken thousands and thousands of photographs and had them digitized, and also videos, home movies, campaign commercials, and that sort of thing. So I had a huge thing to draw from that I think is pretty unique.
And why was it important to you to shine a spotlight really on this particular chapter of American history and on Frank Church and his involvement in this?
Well, he was a man that never gave up on his principles. He had cancer when he was a young man, and that gave him a lot of courage to take things on that most people wouldn't. And so, on that level, I think he was a real hero. And then the other thing, he was just so honest. He when he did all the wilderness things in the Sawtooth National Forest, he actually sold a ranch just because, and it was actually his wife's Bethune's ranch where they were married. And he just wanted to show that there was not going to be any conflict of interest. So, of course, when people see this now, they say, wow, this is what happened. This is a really good example of somebody that was honest. And James Risen had a book that came out that was entitled The Last Honest Man. And I think that's a pretty good, well, not the last honest man, but I think it's a pretty good assessment of Frank
So
Church.
I've got about 2 minutes left with you. You're going to talk about your film at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute in Boise on this Thursday. What are you hoping folks take away from your presentation?
Well, I just hope that they remember Frank Church. I don't think anybody, I was at a class at BSU looking for interns, and I asked how many people know who Frank Church is, and two people in the whole class raised their hand. And I think
Mm.
it's just really important. His message is so prescient for today, and everything he was standing for is still very important for our country, for the citizens to know how to involve themselves, for them to choose people that can change the what I consider to be a pretty dire circumstance right now.
And before I let you go, what's next for you? I heard you're working on a history of the Wassmuth Center for Human Rights, and I've got a little bit less than a minute.
Yeah, that is coming out fairly soon. We're hoping to get it on one of the local KTVB stations here, and that just was another example of various people in history, especially Bill Wassmuth, who battled the Aryan nations in northern Idaho in the 1980s, and basically. Eventually, they were driven out of their compound up there in Hayden Lake, and so that's another example of people out there who take a stance. They're not afraid, and it's good to get that kind of message out.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. We've been speaking with filmmaker James Mulryan about his documentary, Senator Frank Church Portrait of a Patriot. He'll be speaking about the film at the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute in Boise this Thursday. You've been listening to the Idaho Matters podcast from Boise State Public Radio. To stay in touch, you can find quick Idaho Daily News every morning when you subscribe to the Connector podcast. Know someone who might enjoy our podcast? Be sure to share it with them today.
The fatal shooting of a teenager at a protest in Seattle has gone unsolved for 6 years.
This is open in your face. How are there no answers?
Our investigation has uncovered new evidence and witnesses who say they've never talked to police.
Did police ever call you?
Not once.
Listen to We Keep Us Safe, a new true crime series on the Embedded podcast from NPR.